Speaker. Last June, I asked the minority Liberal government if it would respect the vote of Parliament and table a budget. The Minister for Transport and Internal Trade declined to answer. Instead, she praised her new Prime Minister's latest costly political gimmick. 9 months ago, that same minister resigned her position as Trudeau's finance minister. This saved her the embarrassment of tabling another broken fiscal budget. She was spared from having to admit she'd broken through her fiscal guardrails by tabling a $40 billion deficit. What should have been even more humiliating is that it was only 18 months ago when she tabled the 2024 budget, which claimed the deficit for this fiscal year would be $38 billion. Independent estimates suggest this year's deficit will be anywhere from $80 to $100 billion. That's more than double what the former finance minister promised in 2024. The Liberals just aren't crashing through their fiscal guardrails, they're nuking them from outer space. This level of fiscal recklessness is dangerous at the best of times, but we are not living in those times right now. Around the world, bright flashing warning lights are going off about governments, debt, and deficits. Riots in France have followed the collapse of the French government after failing to pass a budget to reduce the deficit. The Prime Minister of Japan resigned amid growing concerns over the bond market. One would think that a former central banker would understand the days of governments having easy access to debt are coming to an end. Yet this minority Liberal government seems hell-bent on testing the limits of investors' patience. What's worse is that this Liberal Party is doubling down on failed economic policies. As Americans turn away from the principles of economic freedom, they seem to be adopting more and more Canadian-style protectionism. It should worry Canadians that when this government brags about ignoring trade deals with Europe and Asia that require free trade in procurement, when Democrat Senator Bernie Sanders is celebrating a Republican president's move to seize a 10% stake in a private company, freedom-loving Canadians should take note. Now we have a Prime Minister who can't stop talking about using public money to catalyze private wealth. We saw from the Prime Minister his fake housing announcement on Friday how this works. The Prime Minister announced millions of tax dollars that would flow into modular housing company he had invested in. The Liberals claim that these affordable modular homes will be built on federal land. Here's a quote from a news story about the Liberal housing announcement. Quote, Canada plans to ease a housing shortage by leasing public land to developers for construction of affordable houses under a plan unveiled by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. End quote. Sorry, Mr. Speaker, that quote's from last year's identical Liberal housing announcement. The only thing new the Prime Minister's in his announcement was a new bureaucracy the Liberals announced to duplicate the work of Canada Housing and Mortgage Corporation. Last year, when Trudeau made the same announcement, we saw the result. Nothing was built because Liberal regulations required homes to be multi-unit, net zero, gender neutral, and decolonized. Unsurprisingly, few developers leapt at the chance to build tiny woke homes nobody wants to live in. Soon the Liberals will learn that Canadians don't want to raise their families in modular boxes stacked atop one another. But by then, it'll be too late. Liberal insiders will have pocketed the housing cash. Then this government will move on to announcing its next recycled housing plan to not build homes.
The Honourable Parliament Secretary to the Minister of Finance and National Revenue.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's great to be back in this House. I've really missed it over the summer. And Mr. Speaker, I'd like to point out to the members opposite that just last spring, that member on the other side who's posed the question ran on an election platform whose plan of action for their 100 days, their first 100 days in office, get this, did not include tabling a budget. How surprising that we should have an opposition criticize us for the things that they themselves don't follow. Thankfully, Canadians don't have to witness that 100-day action plan come to fruition. That's because, Mr. Speaker, Canadians made it very clear they wanted a government that will take bold action to drive economic growth, create good-paying jobs, and have all Canadians benefiting from Canada's unique and vast wealth and prosperity. That's exactly what we're doing. on this side of the House, Mr. Speaker. We're doing it with strength, with purpose, with agility, with positivity. Canadians know that this new government has a mandate for change, including cutting taxes for the middle class and bringing down costs to put money back in their pockets. The government already has delivered on that plan to build one Canadian interconnected, resilient economy that everyone can afford. Just remember the major projects list that just came out, creating over 10,000 jobs. And we also, in the fall, passed legislation to introduce a middle-class tax cut to Canadians. That's 22 million Canadians from across Canada that will save up to $840 a year for dual-income families. For first-time home buyers, the government's GST relief on new homes valued up to $1 million would save them up to $50,000. We're also lowering GST for first-time home buyers on homes valued between $1 million and $1.5 million. That's real, tangible support for Canadians on affordability in the areas where they really need it. The recent launch of Build Canada Homes will accelerate the construction of new builds and deeply affordable housing to further bring down housing costs by increasing availability. And for everyday Canadians at the pump, yes, we canceled the consumer carbon price to refocus carbon pricing on large emitters. These are just a few examples of how our government is delivering for Canadians. As Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance and National Revenue, I had the privilege over the course of this summer to do countless pre-budget consultations and hear from Canadians right across this country, from Iqaluit to Halifax to Vancouver Island. As part of that process, I heard from workers, industry leaders, experts, stakeholders, civil society organizations, municipal and provincial and territorial leaders. They provided invaluable input to the budget process. Ahead of the 2025 budget, we will continue to focus on ways to grow the economy sustainably and make life more affordable for Canadians. This includes the need to make substantial investments in priorities such as nation-building infrastructure, defense and housing, and to catalyze private investment to advance our national goals. Mr. Speaker, as we've stated, the budget will be released this fall, and it will lay out a plan for building a new industrial strategy that will transform our economy and will help us access foreign markets. In a rapidly shifting global landscape, this is how the government can bring down costs and create greater certainty, security, and prosperity for all Canadians. Thank you.
Member for Algonquin, Renfrew, Pembroke.
The Parliamentary Secretary's response was to repeat the same Liberal talking points. For Liberals, it's all about spending announcements. But as I said earlier, a budget is more than just about a list of Liberal spending. A budget is supposed to explain how much Canadians are going to be spending, how much the Liberals are going to be spending, what taxes are the Liberals going to hike, how much are they planning to borrow, how much will they spend on interest payments. By hiding from Canadians for 6 months, the Liberals have only increased economic uncertainty. And in the meantime, they failed to get a trade deal. They failed to approve a single infrastructure development, and they failed to give our troops the raise they promised. Canadians just can't afford this record of failure.
The Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance and National Revenue.
Well, thanks, Mr. Speaker. In Budget 2025, it will be the next step in our plan to catalyze investment and build a new Canadian economy, one that creates higher-paying careers, raises incomes, and can withstand future shocks, which are ever more increasing with climate change and many global instabilities that we see. We are really laser focused on building the strongest economy in the G7. This fall, we will deliver a comprehensive, well-planned budget that advances those objectives, and we will deliver it with a new approach focused on reining in wasteful operational spending and focusing instead on capital investments in the big things that will drive this country and move us all forward. Thank you very much.